Hi everyone. So what we're going to look at in this webinar is the importance of fundamental movement skills, and we're going to look at it in relation to why are they important for Gaelic games. So the first thing we're going to look at is the session outcome, so what we plan on covering over the course of the next hour. So the first one is, how big is the problem in Ireland at the moment? What are fundamental movement skills? So what are they, what type of skills are they? And then how do they fit into physical literacy model? So fundamental movement skills aren't just the movement, it's trying to figure out how do they fit into the whole physical activity for children and teenagers. Then we wanted to look at a bit of Irish research that has been done quite recently and where we are in a primary school setting at the moment. And then we're going to look at, so why are they important for Gaelic games? So what does it matter to have, why is it important to have fundamental movement skills or good fundamental movement skills for young footballers or young hurlers? And then finally, what we want to look at is a few ideas that what you as a club coach could do to try and incorporate these fundamental movement skills into your own club or into your own sessions. So the first thing I want to look at is the picture for Ireland at the moment, and it isn't a very pretty one. So the first thing is that we are in line to be the most obese country in Europe by 2030. So if we keep going at the rate we're going, in 10 years' time, we will be the most obese country in Europe. 1 in 4 people in Ireland are overweight or obese, so that's about 25%, which is quite high. And by 2030, this is projected to go even higher if things don't change. Things don't start to change. For children and teenagers, they're supposed to get 60 minutes moderate to vigorous physical activity per day. So moderate activity would be anything where their heart rate is just raised a tiny bit, and vigorous activity would be considered their heart rate is raised a good bit and they're also breathing heavy or sweating. So this is what children are supposed to get every day. So 60 minutes every single day of the week. Now there was a study done in 2018, and it was looking at how many children in primary schools and secondary schools in Ireland meet these physical activity guidelines. Now, what you see in the brackets, so primary school, there is 17%, so less than 1 in 5 net the physical activity guidelines of 60 minutes per day. There was 17% in 2018. What's in brackets is 19%. So the same study was done in 2010. So in the previous 8 years, we have actually gotten worse than where we were in 2010. So it went from 19 down to 17. For boys, it's a little bit better than girls, so it's 23% versus 13%. Now, 23% is still nowhere near where we need it to be. And then for secondary school, it gets worse. So only 1 in 10 children in secondary school reach the moderate to vigorous physical activity guidelines. And this has come down as well in previous years. So in 2010, it was 12%, and now it's 10% in 2018. And a similar picture as the primary school for secondary school, boys are getting more, so it's 14% for boys and 7% for girls. So a huge thing for us, especially at teenage level in sport, in all sports, we have it in Gaelic games as well, is that between 12 and 14 and 16 to 18, there's huge dropout rates that are occurring. So this is what's probably causing this dropout in the number of people that are meeting the guidelines. A huge thing for us as coaches is that probably the players that are playing 2 or 3 or 4 sports are probably doing too much exercise, and then we've got too many people not doing any exercise or not doing enough exercise. So this is a really important thing that we just need to take note of. Another thing that came from this study is, on average, children are spending 3 hours per day on a screen. So be that on a phone, watching videos on YouTube, on a laptop playing games or playing apps, on Nintendo, on PlayStation, Xbox, or even just watching television in the evening time. So on average, they found that children were spending 3 hours per day on a screen. So this is just a graphic that I found, and I was looking at, well, if these are if the last slide was looking at the amount of children that were physically active to the required level, what is the benefits of being that? What is the benefits of being that physically active versus not being that physically active? So in the blue band, you'll see all of the different benefits, so you can look at them yourself and see what they are. They look at loads of different topics, loads of different areas in life. The big thing here is at the end. So active parents are associated with active kids. So it does start at home. So trying to get parents, if it's normal for on a Monday or Tuesday or whatever evening, that if there isn't training on and the parents or go for a walk or go for a cycle. Now, I know we're seeing it a lot at the moment where people have probably never been walking as much. If that is seen as the norm at home, that physical activity is part of daily life, then children will grow up seeing that this is normal. So this is a big thing for us, especially if you're a parent watching this, is kids will learn from what they see. So if they see activity being normal, that is what they'll copy and that's what they'll follow on to be. So what we're going to look at now is what are fundamental movement skills. So I suppose the biggest thing for us to figure out is that fundamental is so, the word fundamental means that it can't be done without. So they are the building blocks for sports participation. So if you need a strong foundation, and the fundamental movement skills are that foundation in order to succeed in sport. And they cannot be done without. So you can't replace a lack of fundamental movement skills with being really sport specific, having high levels of sport specific skills, because the sport specific skills are a level higher than the fundamental movement skills. So if you can't get a good foundation in the fundamentals, it makes the gap to go from beginner to sport specific skill too high. So they need to learn the fundamentals before they can make the jump up to the sport specific skill. So this is why it's really crucial for us to work on them in our nurseries and child programs, so our 6, 8s, 10s and 12s, so that when we do want to do our sport specific skills, that we're setting the children up for success. So one of the things you'd hear a lot, or I'd hear a lot about certain kids that would be very sporty orientated. You might hear that Johnny or Mary is good at everything. So they might be good at hurling, they might be good at camogie, good at football, good at soccer, good at basketball, good at swimming. Things like all these different sports, and they're very active kids, and they say they're good at everything. They may be good at everything, but what they really are experts in is they're really, really proficient in the fundamental movement skills. So if they have a really, really solid foundation in the building blocks for fundamental movement skills, then they'll be able to take up sports and play loads of different sports to a reasonably high level. So I suppose the thing here we want to look at is it nature or is it nurture? And it probably is a mix. It probably is a mix of two. So I was at the National Coaching Conference in January, and Dr. Niall Mina from DCU was talking about the nature-nurture debate, and one lovely line that he came out with was, you can't put in what God left out. So basically looking at the genetics. So this is very relevant with regards physical attributes, so say strength, power, how tall someone's going to be, that sort of thing. So if you have a child come into a club, or two children come into your club at 6, and there's the exact same amount of training, they go to all the trainings that are on from 6 until 18, those two children will not turn out the same no matter what. So there is a little element that their nature is going to determine their ceiling or their floor. So the thing is that genetics do play a part, but what we can control is the nurture element, so the environment the kids are going to grow up in. So like we said about the active parents have active kids. Another thing is, and I'm watching it more, or I finished watching it, is the Michael Jordan The Last Dance Netflix series. Michael Jordan was talking about how his playing basketball with his brothers influenced his career, and that it drove him to be super competitive from a very early age. So that sibling rivalry is another element of the environment that some children, if they're growing up in families with more than just one in it, that being able to go out in the garden or in the green and play with their kids is a big part of their environment as well. And then similarly to that is their friends. So if kids do have brothers or sisters, or they might have neighbors that they might play with on a regular basis as well. And then the final environment then was looking at is the school. So I know schools at the moment, in the last few years, there's been an active flag for schools that are reaching physical activity levels that are the criteria for getting the flag. And the GA in the last 3 years have brought out the active flag, or the GA 5-star centre flag. So these type of initiatives are trying to get schools more physically active. I know there's the Daily Mile is another one that schools are doing as well. So I suppose the big thing for us to know from fundamental movement skills point of view is that they aren't the full picture. There is more to fundamental movement skills or physical activity than just fundamental movement skills. So we'll be looking at it in the next few minutes. What we do know is that kids that are better at fundamental movement skills are more active as teenagers. So the better they are at the fundamental movement skills, it gives them the leg up so that they're able to be more active when they're teenagers. So if we looked back at the very beginning where we said that in secondary school, only 1 in 10 children in Ireland in 2018 reached the physical activity guidelines of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day. If we get children with get them really proficient at their fundamental movement skills, they will become more active teenagers, and that has been shown across the board. So then I suppose another thing we want to do, and it kind of goes back to the building blocks for sports participation. Schools do a fantastic job of teaching children how to read. So children will go in, a 4 or 5 year old will go into primary school next September, hopefully, and they won't just be handed a book and say, read that now, you're in primary school, off you go. They do their phonics, they learn the sounds of the letters, and then they try and put syllables together, and then they learn the simpler words, and then they get to more complex words. And once they know a few words, then they're trying to put sentences together. And once they are able to put sentences together, then they start putting paragraphs together, and then they start putting pages, and then they're able to do more and more. And then finally they're able to read a book, depending on the age and the difficulty of the book. So schools are really, really good at this. And fundamental movement skills are exactly the same. So being able to, the step between the step and the step up, so making the challenge appropriate so that the child is able to succeed is a really important thing. And the fundamental movement skills are the step before the sport specific skills, which we'll find out later on in the presentation. So what we're going to look at is, we've probably seen it before on our Award 1 coaching course, if you did the child course. So the foundation, so we're going to look at the fundamental movement skills as the building blocks for our house. So the ground floor is your agility, your balance, your coordination. So setting a good foundation, that these are really, really important. Then you've got your walls, which is your running, jumping and throwing. So you're running in your different directions. You're running forwards, running backwards, sideways and diagonally. Jumping, being able to jump for height and be able to jump for length. Being able to jump from one leg, from both legs. So that's a big thing as well. And then you're throwing, so your different types of throw. So you've got your chest throw, your underarm throw, your overarm throw, and your sidearm throw. And then some of the throws you do with 2 arms, and some of them you would do with 1 arm. And then the roof of our house then is our catch, our pass, our strike, and our kick. So these are the final fundamental movement skills. So our different types of catch, our claw catch in hurling, our tummy or our reach catch, or our jumping catch in football, our pass, so it would be our striking or our kicking, so striking on the ground or striking from our hand, and then our kicking from the ground or kicking from our hand. A big thing for this is looking at it from the perspective of the child's world. So the most important thing for children, in order to keep them involved in sport at a young age, is that it needs to be fun. So the fun, when we're looking at our house and our fundamental movement skills, is the fun are the windows that let the light into the child's world, and then the games are the doorway into it. So trying to work the fundamental movement skills into your nursery program, and the door into that is to introduce them through games. And then the heat or the energy for fueling the fire, I suppose, in the child, and bringing the energy to the training session, that comes from the coach and the parent, which is a really big thing for coaches in clubs to be doing, and then parents to be supporting at home as well. And we've probably never seen as much of it as we have seen recently. Now the clubs aren't out at the moment. Parents are probably playing outside with their kids more than they may ever have. So with regards to this, and we're saying that the fundamental movement skills are the building blocks for sporting success, you wouldn't build your house upside down from the roof with the roof on the ground. So it's really important for us to know, where are the children developmentally? So are we setting them up for success, or are we not setting them up for success? So one of a lovely acronym that I came across was WIN. So most people would associate winning with playing a game and keeping scores. This one looks at winning being what's important now. So I remember we were watching about 5 or 6 weeks ago, Paddy Butler was on the national coaching webinar, and he was talking about in Drum and Inch, they're under 8s. What's important for them at under 8 is that every child can do a grip and swing at under 8. At under 10, they can strike from their hand with their preferred side, and at under 12, they can strike left and right from their hand. So that's what's important for them at the different age groups. So I'd add fundamental movement skills that at the child level, fundamental movement skills are absolutely crucial in order to help the children be as good as they possibly could be down the line. So as I said before, we don't want to be setting them up for failure. So if an under 6 comes into your club and you start with the catch, so you start off with the roof of the house. So you start with catch, pass, strike, or kick. If you start off with them more complex skills and then they aren't able to do it, the net result of them not being able to do the task that you set up is the child might feel like they're a failure. So it's really important that for us as coaches that we're setting activities that are age appropriate, can be made harder or easier dependent on the challenge. So if a child is finding something easy, how can you make that activity a little more difficult for them so that they'll be able to be challenged? And we'll look at it later in the presentation as well. Or if a child is struggling, how do I make it a little bit easier for them? So how do I assist them? So it might be change the equipment. It might be ask them to do something different a little bit. So that's something we really need to consider, that 6, 7, 8-year-olds, that they're not going to be able to perform the skills as well as a teenager or an adult might be able to. And having that empathy with the child that this is difficult and the learning process for them isn't going to be easy. So as I was saying earlier on, that fundamental movement skills, they're really important, but they aren't the full picture. So physical literacy, I was looking at the SkullNet website, so for primary school teachers, and physical literacy, fundamental movement skills come under a thing called physical literacy. So the main aim of physical literacy is to have lifelong participation in sport. Now, from our perspective as football or hurling coaches, is we'd love players to be staying involved in football or hurling or camogie. That would be what we'd absolutely love to do. But if we want to avoid being, like we've seen in the first slide, if we want to avoid being the most obese country in Europe by 2030, yes, we'd love them to be playing our Gaelic games, but it's really important that they're physically, if they're just physically active, that it's really, that'd be a huge plus. And looking at the research at the moment, like 17% in primary schools and 10% in secondary schools, that they're not meeting the physical activity levels that they need to. So the 3 components then of keeping children involved or people involved in sport for life is, the first one is their motivation and confidence. So it's like anything. If you're motivated to do something, you're more likely to do it. Now, some people are motivated by different things, and then being able to build that confidence within them. So the two of them kind of feed into each other. So if I feel confident, I will be motivated to do something. If I don't feel confident or I not feel I'm able, well, then I won't be too motivated to do it. Where the fundamental movement skills come in then is the movement competence. So how well do I think am I able to do the movements that I'm being expected to do? So am I able to do a jump? Am I able to throw? Am I able to catch? Am I able to dodge someone, evade someone? Have I good balance? So those are the movement competence skills. And then the last element, and it's something that probably might be overlooked sometimes, is the knowledge and understanding. So are we just doing our training sessions to go through, to do whatever it is we're going to do in the session plan? Or are we looking at trying to increase the players' knowledge on the skill? So as coaches, do we ask questions of our players? So I know I did it in the planning presentation a few weeks ago. Asking questions of players, not only does it give you feedback on what they know, but you might pick up something that from their perspective that you mightn't have thought of yourself. So the knowledge and understanding, the best way you can find out from a child what it is that they know is by asking them a question. Now the big thing for us as coaches is that the question for an 8-year-old isn't the same as the question for an 18-year-old. So something as simple as an underarm throw, you could ask an 8-year-old, which foot do you put in front when you're throwing with your left hand? And they'll say that my right foot. Whereas if you're asking an 18-year-old a question, you could go into something more tactically complex, like saying, well, when would you go here when the ball is coming in? Or when would you mark from in front? When would you mark from behind? So the knowledge and understanding of the questioning element of physical literacy can be age appropriate. So you can make the questions more difficult as the players get a little bit older. So with regards to physical literacy, then we've got a positive spiral of engagement. So we start out with motivation. So we want players that are motivated to go out and train. So being able to, I go out and I play hurling, or I go out and I play football because I want to do it. The result of that then is if you go out and practice 10 or 20 or 30 minutes every day, you will start getting a bit of confidence from it. So you will gain that bit of belief in yourself that I'm getting better at this and I like this. And then from that confidence, then confidence comes within the child. So if I'm motivated to do it and I get confidence, so I can see that I'm getting better, the result of me getting better at it is then I start feeling more confident. So when I have confidence, I'm more likely to do it. And then that loops back around then to motivation. So if I'm confident, then I'm more likely to go out the next day or the next morning and go out and practice a little bit more. And then when I'm more motivated, then I get more confident, and it loops and loops and loops. So trying to get players into a situation where they're in a positive spiral of engagement. Now, what the research has found with regards competence, it doesn't actually matter how competent the child is. What matters more is how competent the child feels they are. So if they feel like they're flying it and they're doing really well, that's the most important thing and component to making them feel more confident. And then they'll start they'll get better just by being more motivated and practicing more. So the big thing for children is, I was watching Eamon O'Shea's webinar last week, and he was talking about especially coaching children or youth players, and he was saying that a player might do something wrong 99 times out of 100. If you praise them for that one time that you spot them doing it correctly, their whole self-esteem will come up because they'll perceive that they're doing something right, even though they got it wrong 99 times. So if we want to build up players' probably self-image of themselves, feeling like they're able to do it or they aren't, really trying to praise and encourage when you see them doing something correctly and well is really, really important for us as coaches. And trying to stay away from being too negative is something that will really help children feel more competent, and then should in turn make them more confident players as well. So I know from our Award 1 and our foundation coaching courses and Award 2s that fundamental movement skills have been classified in agility, balance, coordination, run and jump and throw, and catch, pass, strike and kick, like in our house. But the PDST, so the professional development for teachers in Ireland, on their website, they have under fundamental movement skills and physical literacy, they've kind of went into a bit more detail on these. So all of the ABCs are within these three categories. So we're looking at, the first one is locomotor skills. So it's moving the body. So it's anything from walking, running, hopping, skipping, jumping out, jumping up, dodging, sidestepping. Then we've got our stability skills, which would be considered our balance components of our ABCs. So balancing and being able to land correctly. So that would be landing on 2 feet or landing on 1 foot. And then manipulative skills, which is our being able to use an object or use a ball. So these are our roof on our house then. So they're our catching, our throwing, our kicking, striking with the hand, which would be our hand pass, and then striking with an implement, which would be striking with a hurley. So those are on the PDSD website, and at the end of the presentation, I'll be sharing a few links to good websites for looking at fundamental movement skills and physical literacy. So the next thing we're going to look at then is Irish research at the moment. So there has been research in Ireland done in DCU. So Stephen Behan would have been working with Dublin GEA, and he wanted to look at, well, what is the state of play with physical fundamental movement skills in an Irish primary school setting. So what he did was he tested 2,148 children across the country. He did children from junior infants up to 6th class. So there was ages from 5 all the way up to 12 or 13. He had schools that were rural schools, so country schools, and he had schools that were urban schools. So he had mixed demographics from country or city. Then he had large schools and small schools. And then there was also DESH and non-DESH. So children in schools from a disadvantaged area and children in schools from a non-DESH or non-disadvantaged area. So it was a very good sample looking at across the board in primary school situations in the country. Probably the biggest things to take away from his research was 1 in 4 children couldn't run correctly. So that's over 500 children couldn't run correctly. Now I'll show you in a few minutes the video on the PDST website. That's a scary thought, that if 1 in 4 can't run correctly, well, how are they supposed to be able to play games to a high level when they get older? So, and then the next one was that one out of 2, so only half the children in the study were able to kick correctly, and then 5 out of 6 weren't able to overarm throw. So I suppose we're going to look at what are the ramifications for not being able to do this down the line. If I can't overarm throw, well, what does that mean for us as coaches in Gaelic games? The last thing then we looked at then was, across all the fundamental movement skills that he assessed in the study, only 2%, so one child out of every 50, so 220 out of the whole sample, were able to do all of the fundamental movement skills that were tested proficiently. So like what we were saying is, children that are better at fundamental movement skills are more likely to be physically active in life. Well, the big thing with that is, are more physically active as teenagers. In a primary school setting, 1 in 50 were able to do what it is we want them to be able to do, which isn't very promising. So we as clubs and as schools need to work together in order to try and increase this 2% up to a higher number, so that we can make children more likely to be physically active as teenagers, and then that follow on into their adult life. So what I'm going to share now is the videos on the PDST website, just showing what are the different stages of running, and then the throwing video as well.
The ability to run is fundamental for a wide range of activities in both everyday life and sporting contexts. Whether it is sprinting in a race or running for pleasure, chasing a football or trying to catch a butterfly, it is essential that everyone develops a proficient running technique. Ivan has mastered the skill of running. He lands on the balls of his feet. His leg bends at least 90 degrees and his heel almost touches his bottom. Ivan has a high knee lift with his thigh almost parallel to the ground. He holds his head up and his eyes are looking forward. Look at Ivan's arms. Notice how the elbows are bent at 90 degrees and his arms are relaxed and drive forwards and backwards in opposition to his legs. From the front, you can see that his eyes are looking forward and his arms drive toward the middle of his body and not across it. Look also at how Ivan is relaxed and smooth throughout the run. Notice how he leans slightly forward when accelerating and slightly backwards when slowing down. Brian is younger than Ivan and is still at the exploring stage of development. Notice how he is flat-footed rather than running on the balls of his feet. He needs to lift his knees higher. His eyes look down, not forward, and his arms are quite stiff with only a short swing. Katie is at the developing stage of running. She needs to bend her leg to at least 90 degrees and lift her knees higher. This will give her a longer stride. Like Brian, Katie needs to ensure her arms stay close to the body and drive backwards and forwards. Here are the teaching points of running again.
So that is the running video, and then we're going to look at the throwing video next.
The ability to land safely is an important fundamental.
ability to throw is fundamental for a wide range of activities in both everyday life and sporting contexts. Whether it's throwing a javelin, serving in volleyball, or throwing a paper airplane, it is essential that everyone develops a proficient throwing technique. Ivan has mastered the skill of throwing. As Ivan prepares for the overhand throw, he holds the object in one hand and his eyes are focused on a target. He stands side on with his non-throwing shoulder towards a target. He brings the throwing arm back behind the body, swinging it down and backwards in preparation to throw. It is also good practice to raise the non-throwing arm and point it in the direction of a target, as can be seen here in Ivan's throw. Notice also how he steps towards the target with the foot of the non-throwing side. His hips, then shoulders, rotate forwards. From the front, you can see that Ivan's throwing arm moves forward, releases the object, then follows through in the direction of a target and down across the body. Alice is younger than Ivan and is still at the exploring stage of development. Notice how her body faces the target rather than standing side on with her non-throwing shoulder towards the target. She needs to step forward with her non-throwing foot, using this step to transfer weight forward and generate force. Her follow-through is a downward action with very little rotation in the hips and shoulders. She needs to step into the throw, hips, then shoulders, following through down and across the body. Mia is at the developing stage of throwing. She performs most of the teaching points of throwing. To master the skill, Mia needs to bring her throwing arm down and across her body when following through. Her hips should also rotate forwards before her shoulders instead of at the same time. Here are the teaching points of throwing again.
So those are the videos of just looking at what it is considered to be, what they would have had to been tested on for what is good running technique and what is good throwing technique, for example. So 1 out of 4 couldn't do the running correctly and 5 out of 6 couldn't do the overarm throw correctly. So this website is brilliant, and I have it at the end of the presentation looking at all of the different videos. So the PDSC website, looking at videos, very short videos, 2 or 3 minute videos, looking at the things like that. So the next thing we're going to look at then is we're going to go back to the presentation. So we're going to say what does that mean for us as OM? The last thing we're going to look at then is what he did. There was an intervention in the study as well. So at the end of the first part of the study was to see where they were with regards how many could do the fundamental movement skills proficiently. So they found that only 2% could do them correctly, or to do them all as proficiently as possible. Then they did an intervention for 8 weeks. So they went into the school twice a week doing 30 minutes of coaching of fundamental movement skills. And then they had a little bit of homework for the kids to be working on in the evening. So it was only 5 or 10 minutes on things to do with the fundamental movement skills. What they found was that the younger kids were able to learn them easier. So if a child that was younger than 8, they were able to improve more than the older children. Now, the important thing that they also found was that fundamental movement skills could still be developed in 10, 11, 12-year-old children that hadn't mastered them already. So it's never too late for a child that doesn't have the fundamental movement skills to learn them. They can still improve them. But if you want to make the biggest difference, trying to get them done before 8, to get them as proficient as possible by 8, if possible, because there's a huge gap for them to be able to improve. So we've been talking about fundamental movement skills, and we're football or hurling coaches. And so what does it matter? Why does it matter to us? So I did an award one coaching evening with our course on physical literacy and fundamental movement skills this in January this year, or February this year. And what I was looking at, the coaches we did it on the fundamental movement skills, and we're saying, okay, what skill, fundamental movement skill, does this relate to in the game of hurling? It was a hurling course at the time, but the same can be said for a lot of football skills as well. So what we found was, for the agility, the balance and coordination, for agility, a player that has good agility is able to sidestep an opponent. So running at someone and they're able to sidestep and dodge them. For a forward, being able to lose a player, so being able to run and make different changes of direction, different movements, different runs, having good agility will aid that. Similarly then, for if you're not the forward, if you're defending that forward that does have good agility, if I am a defender, it's really important that I'm agile as well, to be able to track them runs and be able to keep with the forward. For balance then, we're looking at landing, and so being able to land. So I talked about it's not much good if you're jumping up to catch a ball and every time you come down you fall to the ground and you get swallowed up by other players. So it's really important that I'm able to jump, get off the ground, and be able to land without falling over. So having good balance is really important for landing when we get off the ground playing hurling or football. And then for solo and in hurling as well, being able to maintain my balance, so being able to keep the ball balanced on my hurley while I'm running as fast as I can. Then coordination. So coordination is something that is using all the different parts of the body at the same time in order to achieve a goal. So every skill in football or hurling has an element of coordination to it, because no skill only works one part of the body. You're always going to have your head and your hands, or head and feet, or head, hands and feet, and head, hands, feet and hurley being used in a skill. So coordination comes into every single skill that you would need to be able to do in games. Then we looked at running, is jumping and throwing. So running, the most important thing with running was being able to get to possession before your marker. So I'm beside my marker. If I'm faster than them or quicker than them, and we're standing side by side, if I'm quicker, I'm more likely to gain possession. Now, then you'll get players who marks from in front, who marks from behind. But if you were to say, if someone would start right beside you and no one was in front or no one was behind, being able to run faster than the person you're going for the ball with is an advantage for you as a player. If your team the ball is after going into your full back line, if you're a midfielder or a wing back, being able to run so that you're able to chase back and support your defenders when the ball goes over your line of defence. And then similarly, if you're a wing back or a wing forward or a full back even, or full back line or wing back line, being able to run to support the play is a crucial part of the game as well. So we're not just playing in our own position, we're able to support the play. Now that takes an element of fitness as well, but being able to have good running technique will aid this. Jumping then was looking at being able to catch the ball. So can I, like with our balance and landing, am I able to get up off the ground when I'm trying to catch the ball? So I suppose the best image of that in hurling is Tommy Walsh jumping up and he's about 4 feet off the ground with both of his knees catching the ball. Similarly in football, being able to jump and get your hands over your head and catch the ball. Sometimes a player might have fallen in front of you, so you might have to jump over him. Another one that from the course they came from was, if you're a goalkeeper, important to be able to jump with diving left and right, so being able to make a save. And then in a hurling context, we all remember the video or the picture, the Kilkenny game where Jackie Tyrrell was diving and hooking in the All Ireland final. Similarly, in football or hurling or camogie, diving blocks are a big part of the game as well. So you mightn't be able to get close enough to get the block and block the hurley, but you may be able to be close enough to dive, leave your hurley out at 45 degrees and put it between where they're striking and trying to score or trying to pass to, and you may have a chance of blocking it. So that diving block, and same in football, being able to dive and block is a brilliant skill to be able to do. The last one then was our throwing. So we've got our different types of throw. So our underarm throw in both football and hurling is the foundation for our hand pass. Our overarm throw is the foundation for our catch. So being able to get my hand up here is the same as being able to catch the ball with my claw catch, or in football, being able to reach both arms over my head and fully extend them. So overarm throw is important for catching. And then our sidearm throw, so imagine if you were at a lake or a river and you're trying to skim a stone, so you get a really thin stone and you're trying to get it to hop on the water. That would be considered a sidearm throw because you're just throwing the stone across your body and trying to keep it flat and hopping across the water. That is a very similar action to striking. So you're trying to generate the power from one side of the body over to the other and using your arm, swinging your arm across your body. So the big thing for us, so what for Gaelic games? What does it matter? Well, if we go back to the last slide, 1 in 4 children couldn't run correctly. So that means that them children are going to be at a disadvantage in order to gain possession, in order to chase back if they're trying to support their team, and in order to support the play from behind. So if your teammate in front of you has the ball, you want to give them an option from behind. But if you're not able to run and support play, is going to be a problem for you. 1 in 2 children couldn't kick correctly. So that comes down to the coordination, not being able to coordinate their hand, dropping the ball, kicking the ball with left or right, being able to keep their eye on it. So their head is a part of it as well. Being able to do all of them different components at the same time so that they're able to do the skill. And probably it was the worst done skill of them all is 5 out of 6 couldn't overarm throw. So for our football or for our hurling coach, this means that if they can't throw overarm, they're going to find it very hard to do a claw catch where they're fully reaching out, extended over their arm or extended over their head, or football context, reaching up with 2 hands trying to catch the ball over their head with a full extension in their arms. So this is really important for us as coaches, is that if we want the players to be able to do all the skills in the game in the white box, well, they need to be able to learn the blue arrows first, so the ABCs, RJTs, so that they're able to move on to do the sport-specific skills. Now, what the research found is that a high percentage of kids can't do a lot of the skills, which means that they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle to be able to do the sport-specific skills down the line. And this is possibly could be one of the reasons why children start dropping out at 12 to 14 or 16 to 18. They're not able to do the skills, so it's not as enjoyable for them. And then they don't think that they're able to play the sport. So being able to set a really good foundation with the fundamental movement skills is absolutely crucial. So how can we as coaches develop them? So this is something that I, when I was in first year of college, it was actually looking at strength and conditioning, looking at progressive overload and training over a period of time. So this is a story of a Greek wrestler called Milo, and he was born in a town called Croton. So where he started off, there was a calf born, and he started off training for his wrestling by carrying the young calf when he was growing up. He carried the calf around, so every day he carried it for 4 years. Now, because he was doing it bit by bit, and the calf wasn't increasing their weight too much in a day, he was always able to carry the calf the next day. So as the calf got bigger and bigger, so did he. So like what we've seen in the PDSD videos of the mastery. So Ivan was the child that was able to do the skills at a master. So this is where he's reached the developmental stage. Now he's done a lot of work over time, and now he's at the mastery stage. Then we've got him at the very beginning. So he's got the exploratory phase. So he's only carrying the small little calf. And then we've got him carrying at the developmental stage. So he's in between beginning and mastery, and now he's at the developmental stage. So this is like doing everything progressively over time, little and often, can make a big difference to the end result. So one of the things I've come across in the course I'm doing in college at the moment is the social development theory. So basically what it says is what a child can do with assistance today can be done by themselves tomorrow. And I think it's a very good way of summing up what coaching is. We are here to coach players to make them better able to play. So I was watching Lee Moggan's webinar on the National Coaching Games one about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And one of the first things he said was, coaches need players and players don't need coaches. So there will always be games and activities for players if there aren't coaches going to be there. Now our job as coaches is we need to try and fast track the learning of the players that we do coach. So yes, we're trying to assist them today, but ideally what we want them to be able to do is can they do it by themselves tomorrow or in a week's time or a month's time? And I suppose this goes back to the whole idea of when players go onto the pitch at teenage years playing matches or go games, you can't play the game for them. So a big thing for us is that we want them to be able to play the game and make their own decisions and be good decision makers when they are playing the games. And that will only come through our coaching in our sessions and giving them the best opportunity to learn. So the other way that they're developed then is, I was talking earlier about making the challenge just right so that it's relevant to the developmental age of the child. So we might have heard of a thing called the flow state. So flow is when you're considered to be, the challenge is just right for the ability of the player. So if you might have low ability, in order to be in flow state, the challenge needs to be relatively low. If I have very high ability, in order to be in flow state, the challenge needs to be much higher. Now within this flow, that it does go wiggly as well. So it's not a straight line. There's no like, this is the perfect amount of challenge. Under it is not enough, and too much is too much is too much. So there is kind of that's why it's kind of in a bit of a cone shape, that there is kind of a wiggle room in between, and that sometimes you might have too much challenge, but sometimes it mightn't be enough. So if the challenge isn't enough, what you'll experience is players will start getting bored. So we'll see this in our club training sessions. If we set up our session and the best or the strongest players are finding it too easy, they'll start getting bored of that activity very, very quickly. Similarly, if we set up a challenge that's too difficult for our players, they'll get frustrated because they're not experiencing success. So this is going to lead to anxiety, so that they feel we're setting up activities that makes the child feel, the net result is that they feel that they're a failure if they can't do it, where actually the problem with the activity is it's just too advanced for them. There's nothing wrong with the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old. It's actually that it's probably more relative to an 11, 12, 13-year-old. So trying to pitch the challenge in your session at the correct level for the child. With that then, and I know we did it a few weeks ago with the planning a session, if you're planning your session, it's really important that you as a coach know, well, if I've got players that are going to be good at whatever skill you're going to do in the activity, how can I make it a little bit harder for them, that it's going to challenge them so that they don't get bored? And then similarly, for the players that find it very difficult, how can I make it a little bit easier? So can I change the equipment? Can I do something to make it easier for them so that it doesn't make it too hard for them and they don't get anxious that they're not able and feel a failure? The graphic on the right then looks at from novice to hardcore. So hardcore I'd consider kind of elite or more advanced. You'll be saying that novice players are less able for failure than more elite or hardcore players or older players would be. So it's important that, yes, we can challenge. What you challenge your younger players, we don't need to challenge it too much because we want them to achieve success. But then for your high performance or your high level players, so maybe your older teams or development squads or senior teams, they will be able for more challenge, and failure is a part of their learning process as well, but making sure that there is still chance for them to succeed as well within that training session. So the scientific phrase for this is finding the zone of proximal development, so where the challenge is just right for the ability level of the player. So this goes across all age groups and all sports, making the challenge hard enough that it's not too easy, but not too easy that our players are going to get bored from it. So one of the last things we're going to be looking at are the initiatives that your club could do. So one of the best things that I think that a lot of clubs have is they've got a club coach, or they're getting someone to go into the school for their club and coach the children in their parish or in their primary schools. And because they're going into a primary school setting, the sessions need to be fully inclusive of all children within the class. So the way that they're fully inclusive is the primary school coaches that go in from clubs, they focus an awful lot on fundamental movement skills that all players and all children need to learn. So it fits into the primary school PE curriculum for the school. So they need to work on these as well. So it's basically the GAA coach coming into the school is covering the 30-minute PE session, one of the 30-minute PE sessions for the teacher inside in the school for that week. So this is a really good way for getting fundamental movement skills training into the children in your school in a Gaelic Games environment, so either in hurling or camogie or football. So I couldn't speak highly enough of having primary schools, club school links to work on these inside in a school setting. And then the other benefit of this club school link is trying to recruit players into your club. So if you are a club especially in a built-up urban area where you've got a big number of players on your doorstep, this could be the difference between having 20 under-8s coming to train and having 35 or 40. So trying to get Gaelic Games ingrained into our young players, that they like them, they love them, and they want to do more of them. Another thing you can do is integrate fundamental movement skills into exercises into your sessions. So this kind of goes back to the planning of your sessions as well. So do you do stations? So I know in Dublin, I've cousins and family up in Dublin, in Kilmacud. They have 150 at under 6 hurling and football training on a Saturday morning. So what they do is they have 12 stations with about 12 or 13 children in each station, and they have 2 coaches with each station, and the players move around every 10 or 12 minutes. That is something that you don't need if you don't have as many numbers. So really what stations is it could be moving from one activity to the next activity. Now, if you do have big number of stations, they're a really good way to help coaches really to do as good a job coaching as possible. Another thing to do with your FMS is you can incorporate them into your warm-up. So little fun games that you would do is when you're coaching, incorporate your agility, incorporate your balance, your running, jumping, throwing into your warm-up games so that they're fun and enjoyable for the kids. Tag games as well is another good way that I like incorporating fundamental movement skills into them. So say an example, a game like Stuck in the Mud or Flush the Toilet. What I like to do at times when I'm doing a tag game, so if I tag someone, they'll have to pay a toll to get back into the game. So they might have to go to a corner where there is cones or something, or they might have a throwing. What I would do is you have to do 5 tuck jumps or 5 jumps which are kicking your heels up to your bum over cones in order to get back into the tag game. So instead of standing up and doing Flush the Toilet or Stuck in the Mud, where someone would have to crawl down through your legs or flush your arm in order to get back into the game, if you get caught, you're practicing your fundamental movement skills. So all that takes is just changing up what activity it is you want them to work on in the session. Another really nice way of integrating fundamental movement skills is little obstacle courses or relay races. So this is something that you could involve kids in the designing of them. Now, the only thing I'd say with with relay races and obstacle courses, it's really important that we don't have, if you have 20 at training, you don't have 1 child going and 9 children waiting in each team. So 2 children out of 20 are doing the obstacle course or the relay race, and 18 aren't doing anything. So if you do go down the route of doing that, make sure that the work to rest is good for the children, so that maybe there's 3 children in the group rather than 10, because you want them getting enough activity that they might be out of breath a little bit. They get their little bit of a break when they earn it, and then they're ready to go again when they get their breath back. Another idea that I like for working on fundamental movement skills is a lot of clubs or communities would have a hall facility. So if you wanted to work on fundamental movement skills over the winter indoors, it's a good way to incorporate it. So when you're out on the pitch, you've got loads of space and you want to be playing games. We all love to be playing games. When you go indoors, the space isn't as much, or you don't have as much space. So it's a great time to work on the fundamental movement skills when you don't have the wide open spaces of a pitch, but you can still do so much for working on the fundamental movement skills in the winter. So you could do 6 weeks before Christmas and 6 weeks after Christmas, something like that. And it just keeps the children ticking over a small bit, and kids love doing fundamental movement skills as well. So one of the last things I'll leave you with is, like with the Milo of Croton story, consistency will always beat intensity. So And it goes for everything in life, really. Doing little and often will make a big difference, rather than doing big mad bursts for 3 or 4 weeks, leaving it down and putting it on the back burner for 2 or 3 months and then going hard again for a month. So fundamental movement skills, we don't need to be doing them flat out all the time. We just need to be making sure that we're drip feeding it, doing 10 or 15 minutes most every session, incorporating them, trying to incorporate them into our sessions and trying to keep them ticking over, I suppose, is what I'd say. Just doing little and often all the time, and you'll be amazed at the amount that children will develop in 3 or 4 months. Like I see it when I go into a block in a school for 10 weeks. The amount you'd see children improve in 10 weeks of just doing 30 minutes, 10 sessions. Some kids come on leaps and bounds, and you'd be amazed at the improvements that you can make just by that 30 minutes for 10 sessions in a week. So like we're saying in Stephen Behan's study, yes, it's great that they can learn them before 8, but all hope isn't lost if they haven't learned them by 8. All children at all ages can still develop the fundamental movement skills if they don't have them. And from what we know, it's really important that if they don't have them, we need to work on it so that they can improve them and get them. So the last slide we're going to look at is just a few references that are resources. So the first one is the PDST website. So what I'd like to do, I'll just click out of it at the end of this, is just to show you the different components of it. Another brilliant one is iCoach Kids EU. So it's specifically for child coaches. Then you've got if you're interested in seeing the report from the primary or secondary school physical activity, this is the link to that. Then the primary school research, so this is the link to Stephen Behan's research in DCU. If anyone is on Twitter, these are 5 pages that I follow that I really like. Jeremy Frisch, he's an American, he's a child movement coach, I suppose is what you'd call him on Twitter. Some of the stuff is really, really brilliant. I get so many ideas from him. Game coaching down in Cork is brilliant. Hurling 365 in Wexford is super. Same as the website above. iCoach Kids is really, really good. And Joe Eisenman, he's a big advocate of fundamental movement skills for the long-term development of children in sport. So the last thing I'd just like to show everyone is that PDST website. So the different components of it. So if you go into the link that I've shared at the end of the presentation, what it'll bring to you is it'll bring you to this page. So it's called Move Well, Moved Often. It's probably the best resource in Ireland for children fundamental movement skill coaching. So it's got fundamental movement skill activities, going through the physical literacy model, tips, planning. These 3 are kind of looking at the teacher side of things, so I haven't looked into them too much. The videos then which we went into, so the videos explaining the different skills. So we've got our walking, running, hopping, all of the different fundamental movement skills that they have. So they're just 2 or 3 minute videos that if you want to get ideas, that this is a really good place for you to go. And then the last thing, if you're really interested in them, is they have resources. So these are absolutely amazing books. If you are interested in this area, you can download or you can look at them online. So there's 3 books. There's 1, 2, and 3 books that you can just click into, and they're just a book looking at the different fundamental movement skills. So they've got their directory, and then they've got all the different activities, and then we've got our 3 different types of fundamental movement skills. So that is the end of the presentation. I hope you got something from it, and thanks for logging on, and we'll see you all soon.